Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Today is November 27th, 2012. Information may change between today and when you're hearing this. My guest today is Timothy W. Jones, Speaker of the Missouri House of Representatives. Speaker Jones is the state representative from Missouri's 110th district, which includes Eureka, Wildwood and Pacific in West St. Louis County. The last time Tim Jones appeared with us, he was the House Majority Leader. As a representative, Mr. Jones helped pass dozens of important pieces of legislation, including the Missouri Healthcare Freedom Act. When he is not acting in his role as state representative, he's a very successful attorney with the law firm of Doster Ullom. Today's discussion will center on the accomplishments of the 2012 legislative session, the outcome of the 2012 general election, and a discussion of what is planned for the 2013 legislative session. Speaker Jones, welcome to Conversation.
Lee, it's great to be back here again. Thank you.
We're glad to have you, and thanks for making the long trip over here to this studio.
Almost a day trip from Eureka. But it's a beautiful day, beautiful fall day. So
I saw that your license plate says 89 on it.
Yes.
That used to be you, right?
We have not officially changed over yet, so
right.
We will have all the new designations in January when we invade the capital city in Jefferson City again.
So there was a lot of redistricting that went on.
Quite a bit. We did congressional redistricting. The House and the Senate in the State House did that. And you know, as you know, Missouri lost a congressional seat. We went from 9 to 8. Not because our population didn't grow. Our population actually grew in Missouri by 7.5%.
Right.
It didn't grow enough to keep up with the South and the West, which picked up seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. The State House and State Senate seats were redistricted through a very complicated formula of commissions appointed by the governor that unfortunately did not reach a decision, which causes it to be tossed to a panel of Court of Appeals judges. These judges, honestly, they will tell you privately, they'd rather not do redistricting. They only do it once every 10 years. It's different judges. Mm-hmm. They're not political people. They'd rather not be involved. So we end up with a few strange districts across the state because of that. And that's a process I think we need to look at moving forward.
And there was several of your members that actually got written out of their districts, didn't they?
That happened to Senator Jane Cunningham, who is a good friend of mine, and I know someone you know very well.
Yes.
Her Senate district just evaporated. It was enveloped by a couple other districts, and because of the way the terms lined up this year, she suddenly had nowhere to run. There wasn't even a seat available to her. Mm-hmm. Her seat was actually moved over to the western side of the state in Kansas City. And
she wasn't moving there.
And she was not going to move there, and she would not be able to represent that district, and she would tell you that. So unfortunately, her tenure was artificially terminated short. She still can serve 4 more years in the state Senate if that opportunity ever opens up for her.
And Gary Feuer, he was a one-term representative, wasn't he?
That's correct. And you know, Representative Feuer had a long distinguished career in law enforcement with the FBI. He's now found a new career. He's working as our newest Republican appointee to the St. Louis County Election Board. And Gary was there only for 2 years. He did all that work and was only able to serve 1 term. However, Gary made a big impact. He helped pass a bill last year to the Justice Reinvestment Act. It was a bipartisan bill. It was commissioned by one of the larger think tanks that examines criminal justice, and Gary helped move that through. It was good, positive reform to our criminal system.
Mm-hmm. So, did you feel that you had a good legislative session last time? And the reason I ask that is because if you were to read the Post-Dispatch, you would think that nothing positive was accomplished there.
You know, last session was on the heels of the special session we had the summer before. Back in, I believe that would be 2010. We had the 2011 special session, which wasn't that special, to be honest with you. We did pass a couple of important bills, but one of them ended up being tossed out by the court. So On the heels of that, people's expectations were low. However, I would say that based upon where expectations were, that it was an election year, that a number of legislators were termed out, we had a surprisingly positive session and a great deal was accomplished. There was a signature bill. It was a marquee bill for anyone who operates a small business in the state of Missouri that had to do with the co-employee workers' comp fix. We had a situation in our state where our small businesses were thrown into complete disorder, where now employees could sue each other in civil court in addition to filing a workers' comp claim. The dramatic litigation costs and the uncertainty on businesses was dramatic. It was their number one issue last year, their number one issue, and they said if we don't solve it, it's going to drive tons of businesses out of Missouri. We solved that issue last year. The Post-Dispatch, barely a whimper. And
the governor signed this?
He signed it, and Lee, it was a bipartisan bill supported by both labor and small business. You would think something like that would be something the Post-Dispatch might trumpet and hold out as an accomplishment of a bipartisan legislature. But because the legislature is controlled by Republicans, they tend to ignore the positive and accentuate the negative. Now, other media sources around the state, I'm happy to say, did report that in a very positive way.
We're going to get to the Post-Dispatch and its reporting in just a little bit, but I want to keep going with
Sure.
What other major accomplishments of the 2012 sessions would you say that you're proudest of?
Another huge bill that I think will be transformative for this entire region was a bill that we moved along very quietly, very cautiously. I had a good game plan behind it. It's a piece of enabling legislation to allow all of the civic groups to place a very small sales tax increase on the ballot in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County. It would completely transform the entrance to our city, the Arch Grounds. This proposal was supported by all of the business and civic groups, from Civic Progress to the RCGA, the RBC, which is the Regional Business Council, all of those groups. This is something that we did not vote for a tax increase. It's going to be a referendum that all of these community and business groups are going to have to sell to the people as something to do. It's comparable to what Boston did with the Big Dig in transforming their entire downtown, putting all that incredibly complicated network of highways and freeways underground, making the riverfront more welcoming, expanding it to businesses, expanding it to tourists. It's one of the marquee historic landmarks in this area of the country, but it's underutilized. And 20 years from now, if this were to pass, I'll be able to show my kids and grandkids that I was engaged in something that was truly transformative in a positive way for our region. That bill sailed smoothly through the House. I don't know that anybody voted against it. It was an overwhelming bipartisan vote, and the Senate also completed their work on it, and the governor signed it. So that was another piece of transformative legislation, and we did get some recognition for that. In addition, last year was a very, very difficult budget year again, and we had a bipartisan consensus that we passed a truly balanced, not just balanced on paper or in somebody's fictional mind, a truly balanced budget for our state in these very difficult fiscal times. So a number of accomplishments. The last one was one that was my first act as Speaker when I was elected in September. We passed a bill in session, the Religious Freedom Act. Basically, Missourians have spoken up many times against the President's health care plan. They do not want it implemented in the state. They don't want any part of it. The Health Care Freedom Act is to allow employers to say they can make the choices as to what they want in their health care plans. They cannot be forced by DC to put certain things in their health care plans.
Now, didn't I just read, and we're in latter November right now, so
correct.
People are seeing this later on, but didn't I just read that the governor of Missouri, Jay Nixon, he wants to, because he says it's so late that it's necessary to take the federal government's plan?
Jay has the governor has walked a tightrope on this issue. Back in August, right before the primary elections, he made a very strange statement which shocked a lot of Democrats, that he wasn't so sure that plan, he was referring to Obamacare, he wasn't so sure that plan was the best thing to do for Missouri. Kind of an offhand cuff statement at a press conference about something else that got a lot of attention, because then people were saying, well, the Democratic governor must be opposed to it. He's walked back and forth over whether or not we should do these exchanges in the state of Missouri. And there was a Wall Street Journal editorial just a week ago which included him amongst a group of Republican governors as someone who had serious concerns about the exchanges. So We're not sure, honestly, where Governor Nixon is on this issue. Like so many issues, he sort of has been the imperial governor. He sort of runs the governor's office like he ran the attorney general's office for 16 years. He's very sheltered, even from people in his own party. It's very tough to get an audience with him, and it's hard to know where he is on any particular issue. I think we know where Missourians are on this issue. They're very much opposed to the implementation of Obamacare. We're likely going to end up standing with a lot of the other strong Republican governors like Scott Walker, who have said, thanks, but no thanks. We cannot afford it. Our state does not want it, and we're not going to implement something that is such a federal overreach.
Why don't we back up just a touch and just explain what is this that you're talking about? What is it that now that we have this new federal law is required of the states, the municipalities, and just people? I mean, my insurance, comes through what used to be called Blue Cross.
Right.
Okay, and my parents had Blue Cross. And so, that's how I'm used to having insurance. What is new?
Well, the federal government has placed us on another precipice. We have the fiscal cliff, of course, that's approaching us here at the end of November as we head into the new year. We also have a healthcare cliff that we're on as well. I believe that the Democrats and the liberal special interests in D.C. that want to move us towards a unified single-payer healthcare system thought that this was going to be a lot easier when they passed the Obamacare bill. It's been anything but. The first thing that happened, of course, was it landed in federal court. It worked its way all the way up to the Supreme Court, and Chief Justice Roberts wrote what we probably would agree is a very interesting, almost strange decision. He sided with a lot of Republicans and conservatives in that he believed that it was, and you could not enforce it under the 10th Amendment, under the Commerce Clause. It was beyond the pale on that, but it could be enforced on the states as a tax. And as many pundits have pointed out, the largest tax ever put on the American people in our nation's history. The problem is, though, the bill still requires a great deal of cooperation from the states in order to make it work. And I don't believe the federal government anticipated that so many states, you've got well over a dozen, close to 24 states, almost half the states are protesting to some extent about implementing the bill.
What does the federal government want, and what does Missouri not want?
The federal government wants every state to set up a state-based health care exchange.
What is a health care exchange as opposed to an insurance brokerage that you buy insurance from?
The health care exchange will be the new layer of federal bureaucracy which will look at every single private plan and determine whether it fits the mold of Obamacare or not. This is where you get all of the fear and consternation, which I think is rightly placed about, well, does the plan I've had for 20 years, will it suffice? Will it survive? Will I be allowed to still have it? Or will the federal government say, no, 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 you have to add these new things in, you have to take these things out, you have to add this coverage, you have to delete this coverage. The exchange will determine the private market. The government will determine the private market. The private insurance market will no longer determine itself. The Obamacare model, the number one argument the president used was, if we pass this, we will reduce costs. As you and I have both seen, every month since that bill's passage, the CBO has revised estimates. Healthcare insurance premiums continue to go up. All this is the federal government exerting control over the private healthcare industry, and they're finding it's not so easy because the states and the people in those states are rebelling against the implementation of the exchange, which is the government's hand into the private insurance market in every state. Every state has a separate health insurance market. That is one of the problems with our health insurance issues that has not been addressed. Portability of health care plans. Missouri has its own health insurance laws. So does Maryland. So does Texas. They're all separate. You cannot transfer plans between the states. Portability is something that Republicans have stood for, that we would support, that I would think help drive health insurance costs down. Why don't we have this issue with life insurance? Why don't we have this issue with auto insurance? Why don't we have this issue with any other insurance model where you can get on the internet or turn on your TV and watch all the different commercials from all the national insurance companies on all those other products except health insurance?
Okay.
It's an exhausting topic.
Yes. But I want to carry that into the 2012 general election.
Absolutely.
The Missouri House of Representatives did very well in the election. The Missouri Senate, the Republicans, or I should say the Democrats, picked up 2 seats. And with the exception at the state level of Lieutenant Governor Kinder keeping his lieutenant governorship, I believe every other Republican lost. Why the results? Why are these results for 2012? I didn't ask that very well, but
I've got my own theories. Sure.
Okay.
I've got my own theories, and of course, folks all across the political spectrum want to say, well, it's because the Republican Party needs to do this, that, or the other thing. If you look at the commonality between some of these results, a couple of things become apparent. All of the statewide office holders who won election were either incumbents or they ran on a fiscally conservative message. Every single one of them, if they were a Democrat or Republican. So let's look at each of them quickly. Jay Nixon ran ads that said he was an independent voice from Missouri, took credit for the balanced budget, the AAA bond rating, and no new taxes. That sounds like the Republican platform. Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, incumbent, battle-tested, has won statewide several times. This was his 3rd go-around. He does very well in the cities. He shows up to everything in the cities. Peter Kinder says the first lesson is showing up for things. Mm-hmm. He has shown that he's interested in all of Missouri. And so I think people are very comfortable with him. Despite the travails that he had over the last couple of years, he's a survivor. And people ultimately believe he's a fighter for their values. Secretary of State's race, you had 2 brand new people running, so no incumbent. I believe that Jason Kander was successful because he wrapped himself in the flag, talked about how the fact he was a veteran and proud of his service. I'm very proud of his service as well, but he did not run on a liberal, progressive, socialist agenda, which I believe is at his core, because I've seen his votes in the House over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. Those issues were not discussed.
So he was a state representative.
He was a
state representative even now.
Correct. Clint Zweifel, our treasurer, incumbent, ran on protecting the people's money as their treasurer. Mm-hmm. So every single person was either an incumbent, and if they were not an incumbent, well, they all ran on a fiscally conservative message. So those were the messages there.
Pause there.
Sure.
So what the heck happened to all of those people in the Republican side who were supposed to be the meisters, the ones who are able to create an ethos in which a candidate runs and creates a vision of who they are and why they should be voted for? So
the challengers were largely not incumbents, and they were largely brand new candidates. I respect all of them and thank them very much for running. If Dave Spence and my good friend Shane Scholler and my good friend Cole McNary had not run, we would have probably had a lot of problems down ticket, because that would have freed up a lot of money from Jay Nixon and Chris Koster and others to spend on House races. So I very much appreciate they ran. Those gentlemen, all 3 of them, had, I believe, no intention of running for statewide office more than a year to a year and a half ago. This was something. Cole and Shane left the House early. They were not term limited out. They felt called to service. Dave Spence was a businessman, having a very nice living, running a very successful business, minding his own business, being a contributor to some political activities, and that was it. He was called to service because there was no one else available. So you had 3 candidates who had never run statewide before and who had to quickly put together a campaign and go against some very experienced incumbent veterans who ran on a fiscally conservative message. People went with the name they were more familiar with.
What does that say about the Republican bench?
This is what we need to do. Rebuild it. You have to prepare for a statewide race 3 to 4 years out. You have to at least be thinking about it 4 years out, and you have to be putting the pieces in place. It's 3 very simple pieces. You need to be raising money statewide, and that's important because you need to go around, you need to meet the donors. You need to meet the people who are the decision makers and who are the contributors who support Republican causes around the entire state. You need to go around the state and talk to the media. There's a great wide world of media out there beyond our little hometown paper here in St. Louis that is very influential now in this digital age, in this age of the internet. And they have flooded into the state capitol. All different sorts of media. You have to go meet them and talk to them and get published in their sources around the state. And you have to go meet the grassroots folks. You have to go out and meet all the committee men and committee women. You have to go to all the Lincoln Days dinners. You have to go meet the chambers and the civic groups around the state. I've been doing that as majority leader for almost 3 years now, and as speaker traveling the state for all of my House candidates, meeting those people, working on those donors. People have to understand that, and so I've been essentially running statewide by working for the entire House. People have to understand you have to have that kind of bench building and that kind of preparation. Another person who's been doing that is Senator Tom Dempsey from St. Charles, our new Senate pro tem elect. Another person who has done that, of course, is Peter Kinder. You know, and that's why he continues to remain very popular. You have to build the bench. You have to prepare. The reason we did not have success because of that. And one other issue, the Todd Aiken factor cannot be underestimated. That did affect the electorate greatly, especially in the suburban areas.
Not just in Missouri either.
Nationally.
Yes.
You saw.
I mean, the press successfully made that a national issue.
Absolutely, and Richard Murdoch over in Indiana. And so here's the strange dynamic you saw in Missouri. Missourians we are a center-right, common sense conservative people. Even our Democrats are very thrifty in nature, and a lot of them are social conservatives. Mitt Romney won this state by almost 11 points. It was a landslide for Mitt Romney, his vision, his goals. It was a landslide for the Missouri House and attaining a supermajority for the first time ever. The Senate lost 2 seats, but they lost one because of redistricting that they will get back. So they lost one very highly competitive seat. They still have a supermajority, and all of the statewide candidates ran on a generally conservative message. So if we're going to, it comes down to having the right candidate preparing for the mission, and that's what we have to work on. We have 4 years to do it.
All right, you used the word money, and that brings us to something that you and I talked about before this recording started, and that is 2 articles that appeared in the Post-Dispatch. And I said we get back to the Post-Dispatch. The first one appeared just days ago on the 25th of November, and it mentions you quite a bit in here. Virginia Young. You know Virginia Young?
I know Virginia very well.
She's the author of
this. And in
this.
general, I like Virginia's reporting when she's talking about issues that I think are relevant to Missourians. They do seem to have this fascination with looking at the lobbyist gift issue, which I will be honest with you, Lee, I talked to newspapers and media sources around the state. The Post-Dispatch is the only paper obsessed and fixated on this issue, which I think is irrelevant to job creation.
So apparently, by going to the NCAA basketball regionals, March 25th, I guess, of last year.
Of last year.
Or this year, actually, early 2012,
yes.
Right. That buys you off, and you're going to be giving the ticket holders a bill. Is that the idea here? And also, there's a long list discussion here of various things that you and others, not just Republicans. She also mentions Robin Wright Jones and mentions the governor and Mr. Koster.
They've tended to be fairly equal opportunity in their personal attacks, yes.
But then they come to someone named Julie Allen, who is with the Missouri Ethics Commission. She's the executive director, and she's looking at the specifics of this. But then we come to this other article here, which is actually an editorial by, I guess, a state representative, Jay Barnes.
Yes.
Who talks about huge amounts of money that was poured into this last election here by certain nonprofit organizations. $575,000 here, $225,000, $100,000, $200,000 here, and apparently this Julie Allen doesn't seem interested in where that money came from or getting those names out,
right?
As opposed to finding out who bought you lunch.
Who bought me lunch, right? A $10 hamburger is apparently more interesting to them than hundreds of thousands of dollars in untraceable money being poured through unnamed not-for-profit groups.
Now these are all those ugly commercials that everybody had to wade through. By the way, we're down to 5 minutes, so time goes by fast.
Yes, it does.
So all of us who had to finally turn our TVs off because we couldn't stand the tone of these commercials, this money came from all of these, nonprofits, right? Or
Yes.
I'm sorry, are they nonprofits?
They call themselves not-for-profits.
Okay.
They're set up for election purposes, and then they go away.
So you said to me that that's a goal for the 2013.
That is the focus. And Lee, I think you've known me well enough over the years, and you know that I hold myself to the highest ethical standards. I am someone who, I'm engaged in this truly for the public service of it. In a term-limited state, I'm trying to make an impact in a short period of time, and then I'll either continue to serve if the people will continue to elect me to a higher office, or I'll move on and go back to my law practice, and my wife
make more money
and my wife and my law partners will be extremely happy with that. So I don't need to do any of this, and so I'm personally offended by the Post-Dispatch constantly making these false accusations and insinuations. They get away with it because I'm a public figure, but if I was not, I will tell you, it's really bordering on defamation and libel. And why they're interested in this issue is beyond the pale to me, when we do have other issues like job creation that we need to be focused on, reducing people's tax burden and regulatory burden. And how about transparency in the system? I've always been transparent, and you're correct. I have meetings every single day, as you know, all day long, from the break of dawn till dark. And to try and remember who I sat down with for a cup of coffee last week, much less last month or last year, it's insane to even suggest that influences my decisions.
So you're planning on writing a bill to increase transparency of these kind of transactions?
Exactly. Representative Jay Barnes, who's an attorney, good friend of mine in Jefferson City, and Representative Todd Richardson, another attorney from Southeast Missouri, I've asked them to look into this issue. They are. I'm going to make sure that our ethics system is as transparent and open to the people as possible. And then the people can make up their minds as to whether they believe that this type of money is an influence or not. But it should be transparent, open to the people, and accessible.
Now, you've worked your way all the way up to the speakership from just being just a small representative from small community.
Yes.
Have you ever yourself seen either Democrat or Republican where buying someone a hamburger or sending them to a baseball game or taking them to the Muni has influenced the way that they are either writing a bill or voting on a bill?
I have not seen it. I have not seen it in my caucus. I can't speak for every representative and senator, but I have not seen it. You know, we engage in hundreds of contacts a week, thousands a month with people from lobbyists, non-lobbyists, people who represent associates. Everyone comes to us with a priority and a goal in mind. And the way that they can persuade me is whether or not what they're advocating is good policy for the state of Missouri or not whether they want to offer to buy me a cup of coffee or not. And I can tell you, you can imagine as speaker the amount of offers I get on a daily basis. 99% of people are told, I don't have time, I'm not available. But I have to make time to visit with people who are industry leaders and captains and job creators and businesses. That requires spending time during the day with them, and every once in a while, I have to eat a meal. And I largely, I reimburse all my lobbyist gifts I receive.
Well, that's part of what
and
she
they don't
gets
like
into
they
there.
don't like that
because
either.
You're taking it from your public money that was donated to your campaign and then reimbursing rather than out of your own.
Right, those are private
pocket.
donations, and sometimes I do reimburse personally as well. I reimburse personally. I reimburse from private donations. That my donors have been supporting me now. I was an alderman for 6 years, for almost 15 years. And they know everything I do is public and transparent, and they know that I'm held to the highest ethical standards.
God, I wish we had more time. I mean, honestly, for you to trek all the way over here, I want to thank you very much for being with us today, and definitely we want to have you back and hear more about what's going on. To my audience, I've been speaking with the Speaker of the Missouri House. His name is Tim Jones. He's new to that job. And we're expecting very good things out of the Missouri legislature soon. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll see you next time. Oh yes, we're on YouTube also. Bye-bye.